So in today's video, we're going to show you how we built these custom garage cabinets for the shop, and they've been a huge upgrade, just making the best use of my space and just been very customizable for what I want to put in here and what they're going to be used for. And I did this for a couple reasons. One, what I can buy at the store is usually very expensive. Two, the quality is usually not as good as I would like. And three, they're not quite as customizable as you might think. And with these, the cost was a lot lower. They're about half of what they would have been in steel. I can customize them to whatever I want as far as the size I want of the outside, and then customize the inside however I want to, which is a really great advantage. So in video number one, I'm going to show you how I built the boxes and put them together, and some of the things I kind of learned along the way to help you with your build in the future. And in video number two, I'm going to show you how I put these on the wall, made them custom inside, and really fit my needs. Now, the idea for these cabinets came from Brad Rodriguez's Fix This Build That channel, where he's built a lot of cabinets for his shop and different variations and different configurations. And this is kind of just my take on what he's done. And so big shout out to him. But I kind of wanted to show what I've done to kind of make them my own and really fit my space in what I'm doing in my shop. So for these cabinets, I decided to go with a maple veneer plywood that I got from my local Menards. I worked out all the cuts on a piece of paper for all the pieces of plywood. That way it would have the least amount of waste as possible. I cut all the pieces for my bottom cabinets first for the bottom and sides, and then made the cuts for my top cabinets. Now, a track saw would have come in really handy for cutting up all these sheets, but you go with what you got, right? So I got 2 fresh blades on my Rigid and my Milwaukee and got cutting. But as you can see here, it kicked up a tremendous amount of dust. So I made sure to get my face mask on after this cut. The foam also comes in really handy in giving me a nice cut on the bottom with no tear out. But I made sure to put another piece of plywood underneath that foam because I was getting a little bit of a bend. The circular saw guide from Craig came in really handy too. I really wasn't sure about it at first because of the low price, and it did have some low reviews. But I did have a lot of success with it, and it gave me nice straight cuts. I put my material in specific stacks, and that way I knew exactly how much I had and how much I had left to cut. I cut everything slightly oversized, and that way I would be able to cut it down to the exact size I needed with the table saw. Making cross cuts was a little bit of a stretch, literally, so I made sure to go slow and steady. But making the rip cuts was super convenient with this Craig jig adapter for the saw and gave me nice, clean, straight cuts. Just needed to make sure I held it nice and tight against that edge and really didn't have a problem at all. After cutting the sheets down to more manageable size, I took them over to the table saw and cut my sides and bottom for the bottom boxes. Now, if you've ever cut plywood, you know sometimes you get that little nub on the end. So I got out my Japanese saw and trimmed that off. After cutting down all the bottom pieces, it was time to cut all the top pieces. And they were pretty easy to do because they are all the same width. And the sides are 30 inches and the bottoms and tops are 28.5 inches, so it's just a matter of just batching them out. Now I cut a small piece off of each end just to make sure it was square, and then cut the remainder to the size I needed. Now I did measure all of these individually, and I should have just used a stop block on the end of my fence, but I didn't realize that or think about it until cutting some other pieces. They all turned out fine though. So for my supports, I decided to use a stop block. So I set my piece at the right length at the blade and then brought my stop block to the other end. It worked out really nice because once I got past the block, there was room and it wouldn't bind, and it gave me a nice consistent cut and length every single time. Now it's time to drill lots and lots and lots of pocket holes. Now I'm using 3 pieces, 2 that are going to go along the top of the box and 1 that's going to go at the top back corner of the box. And those 2 will be actually screwed together, and that'll give it a lot of strength and a lot of rigidity. Now I'm not using any back on any of these boxes because I'm screwing them right to the OSB on the wall, so I'm not too concerned about stuff getting the back. I'll have to shim it, and the top should prevent anything from getting into the back of the cabinet. Now, I know that Craig does sell other systems that make this go a lot faster, but I'm not a huge pocket hole fan. I'm only a pocket hole fan when it comes to cabinets like this. And this did take some time. A lot of moving, a lot of undoing, a lot of reclamping, but it all turned out really nice in the end. I started with this L piece that's going in the top back corner of the cabinet, and I made sure to use a clamp to make sure that this would not move when I screwed it into place. Next, it was time for the front brace, so I got that in the right location and clamped it down, and then secured that into place with the pocket screws. So with those in place, it was time to put some pocket holes in the bottom shelf of the cabinet. So I put 5 along the right and left, and then drew some lines on my right side and left side to make sure that bottom shelf would line up properly. Now, I didn't do it on this cabinet, but I would highly recommend that you use a couple of clamps to hold that bottom piece to the sides as you screw it together. That's going to ensure that everything is going to be on the line and everything is going to be nice and square. I grabbed my other side piece and secured that to the bottom and the back and front stretchers, and my box is ready to go. After getting the bottom boxes built, it was time to build the top boxes. And these boxes are approximately 30 by 30 by 13 inches deep. So I screwed pocket holes in the bottom and top of each of the boxes, and then I'm going to secure those bottom and top pieces to my sides. Now, it's not on camera, but I did do all my pocket holes at once for all my bottoms and tops, and that way it made assembly of all of these really fast. Because all I had to do was get my sides that were already pre-cut, bring those over, bring them over to my bottoms, clamp it together, screw it together, and then do the tops, and just repeat the process 3 more times, or for however many boxes you want to make. So for the back of the cabinet, what I'm doing is I'm creating this kind of French cleat thing just to hang it on. It's going to be way easier. So I already ripped that at my 45 degrees. So I'm going to screw this one to the back and this one on the wall. And then I've got another scrap piece that's just going to go on the bottom. So I just got to trim these down on the table saw to fit inside the cabinet and screw it in, and away we go. Now, the French cleat piece that's going into the back, as well as the bottom piece, I measured those exactly to the interior dimensions that I have in the box. The other portion of the French cleat I actually cut at about 2 inches smaller than this, and that way it gave me the room to move my box right or left if I needed to get them to line up properly on the wall without too much trouble. So for attaching these cleats to the back, it's a little harder with this 45 on here to kind of just clamp this in position. So what I did was I took the offcut off one of those boards because I had to trim them down, and I screwed that to another flat block. So that way I can just put that right there, put my clamp right here, and then tighten that in position, and it will kind of lock it so I can actually put in my screws here and my screws here without me trying to hold it or trying to monkey with it. So this works really good, really easy to make. I encourage you to just make these and hold that in place for you while you put your screws in. So I normally don't iron, but when I do iron, I iron on edge banding. Oh, I love the edge banding. And for this project, I decided to be a little different. I'm not just going to go with the maple. I'm actually going to do a little contrast with the black walnut, because every project needs a little black walnut in it, as far as I'm convinced. And so I just couldn't leave it out. I got this from Rockler. It's 50 feet for like $15, $16. It's a really great price. And it's got this adhesive on the back that we just heat up and apply. And if you mess up, if it's not quite positioned right, you just heat it up. You can kind of pick it up and move it to where you want to make sure you're covering that whole seam right there. And for the iron, I just went to my local Goodwill and picked up this old school General Electric for $5, and it works great. So all we do, or at least all I do, is I just get it to about the length I need, and it helps that I found if I just trim it off so I'm not dealing with that tail on there. And away we go. Just make sure we're lined up. Apply the pressure. Sometimes it catches the tail there, so just make sure we have that all the way across and even heat all the way across. Now this trim router with this flush trim bit worked really great for just trimming off any little excess off that edge banding. Left it really clean. Not a lot to really do after that other than hit it with some sandpaper. But that's going to just really do it. Just got to be real careful, hold it nice and tight against that edge, and put some pressure opposite the way you're going, and just make sure your fingers are out of the way. So now that you've gotten through part 1, make sure you check out part 2, because I'm going to show you how I took those boxes and turned those boxes into this, and how I customized them, got them on the wall, and really working for me. So that playlist is going to be right here. Now, if you'd like to see some other videos that I've made as far as shop projects and things that are going to improve the shop, those are going to be right here, and we'll see you in the next video.